Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for coming to my presentation. The title of the presentation is Digital Medicine Applications in Hospitals of the Future. Just very briefly, a little bit about myself. I don't have a medical background, and I have a background in technology, but I am Vice President of the International Society for Digital Medicine, which was established in China about 4 years ago. And so over the last few years, I've concentrated on two areas really. One is digital medicine and digital health, and the other one is commercial use of immersive technologies. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how they intersect. But the main objective of my presentation is to give you three things to think about. The first of these is to do with the fact that it's my belief that the digital technologies that will have the most impact on global health will not be those technologies which are designed by or for medical professionals. The second thing I want you to think about is the use of artificial intelligence. Now, AI is part of our daily life and we've become very dependent on it, but in a medical context, I'd like you to think about whether artificial intelligence for the future of human health and well-being is actually a good thing or potentially a very bad thing. And finally, I want to talk briefly about hospitals of the future and to make the observation that, again, it's my opinion that today's hospitals and today's health services are not part of a National Health and Wellbeing Service, they're part of a National Sickness Service. In other words, their focus is on curing diseases rather than presenting them happening in the future. So I want to give you a glimpse of a new hospital in China, which is a brand new initiative, and I think has got some potential as a model for hospitals of the future as being part of an international health and well-being service rather than focusing totally on sickness. So the other point to make before I start this presentation is to say that the observations that I'm making are not unique to the medical profession. You know, the technologies that I'm talking about will impact knowledge professionals in every single aspect of life. So whether you're a teacher, a bank manager, involved in the law, whether you're involved in the military, or whether you're involved in research and development, all of the things that I'm making today will apply to you. So, the first thing to think about is the impact of digital technologies and whether in fact the technologies that are going to be most influential in the future of health and well-being will actually have been designed by or for medical professionals. Now, if we look at the causes of morbidity by age, I find this rather a depressing slide actually, because I am quite near the end of this, so I don't have a lot to look forward to in terms of the likely causes of my demise. But if we also look at the cost of these lifestyle-related diseases, which are in fact the largest cause of death these days, they've overtaken communicable diseases as being the biggest cause of death. We can see it's almost exponential curve. So if you look at the globally, between now and 2020, we're looking at a 4- and 5-fold increase in the cost of lifestyle-related diseases. And again, if we look at the top 10 causes of death, the bars in blue are non-communicable diseases, so primarily they're the lifestyle-related conditions that bring about death. The red one, the communicable maternal, neonatal and nutritional conditions are actually down in 4th place. They're the red bars on this. So the majority of causes of death in 2016 are very much lifestyle related. So what's the implication of that? Well, the implication, as you've probably read many times in the press, the cost of lifestyle-related medical conditions is becoming unsustainable. The head of the National Health Service has already said several times that we are like lemmings heading towards the edge of a cliff. You know, that conditions like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, lifestyle-related conditions are going to bring the health service to its knees. If we add on to the fact that people are living longer, the ageing society concept, this greater longevity, as you saw from the earlier graph, increases the likelihood of disease and increases the cost burden. But it's a double whammy, because it's not only an increase in cost burden, we're also in an age where there are declining birth rates. So there are actually less working people to support the cost of healthcare. So it really is a very serious situation. And I would say that the vast majority of us, including myself, we enjoy suboptimal health. We are not as healthy as we could be if we did the right things and we're in the right sort of environment. And one of the reasons for this, and it's certainly true in my case, is that there is a time lag between the cause and effect of lifestyle behaviours. Now, what I mean by that is that if I go out and have a few glasses of wine, I can do that for several months in a row before I really felt any long-term difference to my health. And if you're using lifestyle trackers, you know, I've got a wearable device on my wrist here. I started tracking my physical activity some 6 years ago. And when I first started, my background includes serious games and gamification. So for a combination of reasons, I tried to use these devices to gamify my health. In other words, could I set myself targets and improve my health? And I started by using a jawbone up tracker, and I measured not only my number of steps, but I also recorded everything that I ate with its nutritional value and its calories. And the jawbone up would also monitor my sleep patterns. And within 3 months, I'd lost 21 kilos. Simply by using this data to modify my behaviour so that I did some exercise, I ate the better things. Now, look at me now. I am more or less the same size as I was 6 years ago. But I still walk 10,000 steps every day, every single day for the last 6 years, apart from probably half a dozen days. I've walked 5 miles, but I still put on weight. And the reason for that is I blame it on my partner. You know, I got involved in a relationship with a lady who likes food and wine as much as I do. And so even though I am still following this regime of 10,000 steps, I put on weight. But I feel great. My mental zest for life is, I feel like a 40-year-old. But the point is, I don't know what hidden things are going on inside my body, which makes me vulnerable, because I am morbidly obese. I fall into that range with my body mass index, etc. And the reason is that there is this time lag. You know, I don't feel affected by what I do or what I eat, and I think that's true of a lot of people. And of course, the final thing is that we are used very much in this country to have an expectation that healthcare should be available largely free or inexpensive at the point of delivery, regardless of our circumstances, our ability to pay, and crucially, our lifestyle behaviours. So if we pick out and we damage ourselves, we still expect to be serviced by hospitals in the same way. Now, amongst one of the things I do, I write articles. I'm on the editorial board of the Digital Medicine Journal, and I wrote an article about the consumerisation of digital technologies. So if you look at some examples of consumer technologies, some people call them general technologies, aside from fitness trackers, which arguably you could argue that that was designed with some health benefits in mind, but the rest of them were not designed specifically by or for medical professionals. And yet these are the technologies, I believe, that are going to have the most impact on health in the future. So what I see is, in trying to express it very simply, you have technologies at the bottom end of the graph here which are focused for medical professions, which tend to be focused on diagnosis and treatment. And these technologies tend to be proprietary. In other words, they are dedicated. They tend also to be isolated. They're not part of a bigger network usually. And usually they're quite expensive. But what's happening today is that we are seeing a whole range of different devices and applications designed for citizens, which help citizens to better manage their own health and well-being. I have a device on my wrist at the moment, which is called oxytone, and it's a pulse oximeter. It measures and pulse my heart rate in real time. And so this is the kind of device which can be used. It's a medical grade device. It can be used to be able to track my lifestyle behaviours and share these with my health professionals, and I think that is a sign of the future. So it's these kind of technologies up here, which are they're not proprietary, they're generic, they tend to be smart, they're connective and collaborative, both with the hardware and software. Okay. I'm getting a sign. So going very quickly, so as I mentioned, you've got one side clinical solutions, one side community solutions. I'll just show you a very quick example. You might not think virtual reality is a technology which has much relevance to health. Just a couple of examples using immersive technologies for mental health, dementia, stress management, providing people with an immersive experience which affects their physiological and psychological health. Same with rehabilitation. There are lots of examples of using virtual reality for rehabilitation. So what we're seeing is a perfect storm of technologies. None of these technologies exist in isolation, but when they come together, when they mature together, they are a cocktail of disruptive technologies which are interdependent. So none of these technologies really exist in a vacuum. They have to be, as our colleague was talking about, some of the security risks. Some of the security risks are due to the fact that it is a cocktail of technologies with many different elements. The second thing I wanted to make, and now I'm really quite close to the end of my presentation, I don't want to spend too much time on this, is the use of AI and associated technologies. Many different types of usage of AI. The one thing I want you to reflect on is the fact that we've seen the development of devices which monitor our physical condition, and increasingly some of these devices, for example an insulin pump, by monitoring the glucose within our body, this can be used to effectively take over what our body would do naturally and do it for us. So if you take this to its logical extension, will we finish up as in the singularity, as a mixture of humans and technology, where the technology helps us to do what we want with our lives without any sort of consequence, because the technology takes care of that? And I argue that's not necessarily a good thing for human beings. Finally, the hospitals of the past and present are part of a national sickness system. I recently was honoured to be invited to the launch of a brand new hospital in Guijian, which has so much state-of-the-art technology. You may be surprised, as it's a Chinese hospital, that the bulk of this technology was made outside of China. People like IBM with their robotic surgery, GE Healthcare with their MRI scanners, and Siemens for producing the automated labs. So I think hospitals of the future are a big opportunity. Instead of focusing on sickness, they can be actually a positive source of social and economic good for communities. They can act as a hub for social and economic development. I think they need to be citizen-focused and holistic and include preventative healthcare as well. They can be catalysts for innovation and enterprise, and this is part of the business model for this hospital. And I think they're a vital component for a healthy society. So in conclusion, there's lots of opportunities and challenges brought about by digital technologies. There's no doubt that diagnosis and treatment and operational efficiencies of the medical profession are going to be enormously benefited by digital technologies. And some of the technologies that are emerging will help to engage patients better and ensure compliance with some of the medical routines. But the point is that there are many pitfalls. We've already heard about the security aspects of it, but they're dependent on a cocktail of technologies, not a single technology. They don't exist in isolation. And I don't think we should forget that if we're talking about citizen-managed personal health, this can be regarded as a challenge to the medical profession. Medical professionals like to think they are the sole, they have the sole responsibility for a person's health. In the future, that won't be the case. And finally, AI potentially, I think, is a threat to what makes us human beings. So, thank you very much for your time. I hope I didn't overrun too much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions today. Thank you. Oh, has anybody got any questions? There's a question in the back there. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, I can talk about surgery in general, and one of the leading proponents of this. Sorry, I repeat the question. Do I have any information about pediatrics and orthopedic surgery? Was that correct? Yes. Well, probably the most well-known person, expert in this field, who's a user of it, is Dr. Shafi Ahmed. You may have heard of him, but he's often pictured with a virtual reality headset on him. And he's used the kind of technology that I'm using here, 360-degree camera, to stream live his operations. And so there are, and I read recently, also surgeons who are using VR to be able to do remote surgery. So in other words, a surgeon is in a distant location and is using VR to watch the operation. He's actually doing the surgery remotely. He's able to do that. Many other training applications associated with the use of VR. Dr. Shafi Ahmed, if you look that up on the internet, you'll find a lot of information about that. Any other questions? We have time? No. Okay. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Thank you.